Okay, first grade, here we go, moving into math. We usually, on a regular day, we start our math about 10 o'clock a.m. in the morning. So I'm going to be asking you to grab your little clock that I sent home in your bag because I'm going to be using this a lot as we move into some measuring time. We are Wednesday, April 1st, 2020, moving into math time, which we usually start about 10 o'clock a.m. And this is measuring time lesson 1. Now, Ms. Sheppard on her videos is a little bit behind what I've been sending home in the packets. So some of you, the things I'm talking about today, some of you have already completed these things in your packets. Some of you have not. But I haven't done any video lessons for time, so I'm going to call this our blast off starting point today. So if you've already done some of these things, great. This will be a good review. If you've not done some of these things, it will help you as you move into completing some of the things I've been sending home in the packets for the last 3 weeks. We're going to start right off with you reading with me, time, 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 and more time. Just show me the time. I want a quick review of the 5 things we can measure. We do this every day during Fantastic 5. Give them to me. Time, temperature, length, weight, capacity. Again, time, temperature, length, weight, capacity. 5 things we can measure. We're going to be doing a lot of talking today about measuring time. I'm going to show you some of the tools we can use for measuring time. We've done measuring time all year during Fantastic 5, but this is when we're going to zoom in and do some extra lessons as we get to be really good in first grade at telling time. Some of the tools we can use. My mama at her house has a grandfather clock. That's one of those really tall clocks that looks like a piece of furniture. A long time ago, before they had analog and digital clocks, some people used what was called Egyptian water clocks. That was a tool that they used, and they measured time by how long it took that water to drop from this bucket, that would be measuring capacity, how much water is in that bucket, to drop from this bucket to that bucket. Now, I've never seen in real life an Egyptian water clock, but that's something they used a long time ago. The one we use in the classroom is an analog clock. That's the clock that has the hands and the numbers. That's the one we have right up here above the smart board. A lot of you at home have digital clocks, and digital clocks are really easy for people to read because all you have to do to read a digital clock is be able to read those numbers. Now, one that some of you may have seen, I have a couple of these over in my reading groups basket. I don't have hour glasses, but I have some of those little minute glasses. Those are those little tools that if you turn it upside down, the hourglass, it would take an hour for that sand to go from the top to the bottom. My little minute glasses, it takes about a minute for that sand to move from the top to the bottom. So those are some different tools that we have. Tools are things that we use as mathematicians to measure. And those are some of the different tools that we can use to measure time. Now, you know I have some songs and poems. Your songs and poems are not in this week's packet, but you have some of them that I'm going to do today that have been in one of your packets from earlier once we started doing all this school at home instead of school at Walton Academy. Now, this one is not in your packet. This is just a short, simple poem song that I'm sure you have heard. It's called Hickory Dickory Dock. It's about a mouse and it's about a clock. And that's one of those grandfather clocks that I told you my mama has in her house at home. I'm going to read that poem to you. I want you reading with me as you're looking at my smartboard slide from home. Here we go. Hickory dickory dock. Hickory dickory dock. The mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock. Yes, Damien, I know you would be asking me right now, do we have a clip for this one? And yes, I do have a clip. This is a new clip, so I'm going to share this one with you right now. It's short, so you can be watching, listening. You always love when we do our clips on the carpet. Here we go. I hope it's there. I hope Mr. Clip is working today.
Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock. Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock. Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock. Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock.
Now, the next poem I have for you is actually a Mrs. Sheppard original. This is a poem that I wrote to share with my class. You have not had that come home in one of your shared reading packets, but I have that ready to send. I will be sending that one home in the next few weeks for you to illustrate and practice and put in your shared reading packet. I'll be honest, this has been such a crazy time. I'm not sure if we've done this one during Fantastic Five. If we have, great. If not, we're going to be doing it for the first time. You can help me remember if we've done this one already. It's called Hour Power, minutes in an hour. This goes with your time vocabulary that went home last week. And this is a good way for you to help remember how many minutes are in a quarter hour, a half hour, 3/4 of an hour, and a whole hour. You know, Mrs. Sheppard has a song or a poem for almost every little lesson she teaches. Here we go. Hour power, minutes in an hour, 15, 30, 45, 60, an hour, hour power. Now go take a shower. Now that take a shower part was the silly part. That was just for fun. If we were in class when we did this, when I said, now go take a shower, we would stand up and pretend like we were scrubbing in the shower. So let's hit that one again. Read it with me. This is where we work on improving our reading skills during math and our fluency. This is a time when we're doing math, but we're also doing some things with reading and science as we're talking about poems and as we're talking about measuring time. Hour power, minutes in an hour, 15, 30, 45, 60, an hour, Hour, power. Now go take a shower. And if we were together in the classroom, when we read that part, go take a shower, we would do something kind of like that to make it look like we were really taking a shower. Now, yes, Spencer, I have a couple of more clips. Mia, I'm not going to share those with you today. You know, sometimes when I'm introducing something for the first time or we're starting it in class, I don't show you all my clips on the first day. So I know, Lawson, I have a what's the time clip. I know, Eliza, I have a what time is it clip. We won't be doing those today, but you can remind me, City. You can remind me, Jonathan, when we come back to another lesson, you can remind me that I need to share with you those clips. Now, this one went home in your packet last week, so if you want to go grab it from your shared reading packet, that would be great. If you want to just follow along on the smart board, that would be great too. This goes with my hour power that we just did. It's called Fractions of an Hour. This poem was actually written by two of my favorite friends, Mrs. Gaddis and Miss Waller. They were teachers that I taught with when I was at South Greenville Elementary School, and we were looking for a poem to teach measuring time to the nearest quarter hour and the nearest half hour. We couldn't find one, so Mrs. Gaddis and Miss Waller, they actually made up this poem, and it goes to the tune of that song that I know you know, The Wheels on the Bus. So read with me, or you can be listening since this is our first time, and I'm going to kind of do more of a talk than a sing. As you are practicing this in your shared reading folder, you can add that singing voice, that tune of The Wheels on the Bus. I'm going to use more of a talking voice. Let's rock it. 1 hour equals 16 minutes, 16 minutes, 16 minutes. 1 hour equals 16 minutes, and that is 1 whole hour. 1/4 of an hour equals 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. 1/4 of an hour equals 15 minutes, or quarter past the hour. Taking a breath. 1/2 of an hour equals 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes. 1/2 of an hour equals 30 minutes, or half past the hour. Taking a breath. 3/4 of an hour equals 45 minutes, 45 minutes, 45 minutes. 3/4 of an hour equals 45 minutes, or quarter till the next hour. Now, if we were in class, when I start teaching a really big measuring time unit, what I like to do is I like to get my clock, and I like to have a little clock at your table, and all through the day, from when we start on the carpet in the morning and all through the day until the end of the day, I stop about 30 or 40 times a day, and I say, okay, let's look at the clock and let's make our time on the clock. I had planned on us doing this in class together, but since we're not together, this is something you can do at home. When you're doing your schoolwork at home with your families, you can have your little clock right on your table, right on your kitchen counter, wherever you're doing your classwork. You can have it right there, and all through your lessons, you can look at your clock, your analog or your digital, and you can take your clock and you can make that time on the clock. That's what we would do if we were here at school together. You would have these on your tables, and we would stop all during the day. And I would say, okay, let's make the time on the clock. And I sometimes even would pull a stick and tell you, if you could tell me the time on the clock, I'd have a little something special for you. Now let's do a quick, you learned this in kindergarten, this is not new. Let's do a quick review of our hands on our analog clock. Remember that short hand on your little clock at home, it's red. Remember that short hand points to the hour. The long hand points to the minute. Now I know that you already know how to tell time to the nearest hour and half hour because Mrs. Little, except for Ben Flynn, taught you that in kindergarten. So, measuring time to the nearest hour and half hour should just be a review. But we're going to work on measuring time to the nearest 5 minutes in first grade. The problem is you're not here at school with me, so you're going to have to work on this a lot at home. So my suggestion for you and your parents is don't try to work on this all at one time. This is something you can work on all through the day, every day, for the rest of the school year. So have those clocks out. That's a good resource for you to use as we're doing our measuring time. Now that was my poem by Mrs. Gaddis and Miss Waller. You already have that in your shared reading folder. And we know from our poem that 1 hour is 60 minutes. This in Fantastic Five, when I say minutes in an hour, and you shout out 60. And then 1/4 of an hour equals 15 minutes. Now notice with 1/4, we're getting into fractions. When I say 1 hour, that is a whole hour. So we're getting into fractions as we're talking about 1/4 of an hour. And then 1/2 of an hour equals 30 minutes. And 3/4 of an hour equals 45 minutes. So we're getting into 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 1 whole hour as we're breaking down our number of minutes in each. Now, if you were in class today, I would go ahead and draw a big fat, not the most perfect. You can do this with me at home if you like. I would draw my big fat circle, and I would go ahead and put a 12, a 3, a 6, and a 9. Those are some of my numbers that I would see on my analog clock. And from 12 to 3 is 1/4 of an hour. From 12 to 6 is 2/4 of an hour, which equals 1/2 of an hour. From 12 to 9 is 3/4 of an hour. And from 12 all the way back around would be 4/4 of an hour, which equals a whole hour. Now, you don't have this in your packet. This is something we're just going to talk about as we are moving into measuring time. Now, in your packet, you do have a page that looks like this. And you are to write in, actually, you're supposed to draw a big, fat, juicy point in the center. And then you're going to take your ruler and you're going to do what Ms. Sheppard calls, you're going to partition your circle into 2 equal parts. Instead of what I did here, 4 equal parts, because that went with our poem, you're going to partition. This is actually in your packet for this week. I know some of you have already done this. Some of you haven't gotten to it yet. If you've already done it, this is a great review. If you've not gotten to it yet, this gives you a little additional information. And then you're doing a 12 and a 6. And we're writing 1/2 and 1/2. And then I think I put for your 12, I think I put on the hour. And for your 6, I put half past the hour. So that, with your ruler, because we've been working a lot with our rulers and measuring length, and this is how we get a little ruler practice as we're moving on into clocks and time. If you'll draw yourself a big, fat, juicy point smack dab in the middle of the circle, if you'll take that ruler, and you got really good with rulers in measuring length, and if you'll hold that ruler and let that pencil glide and slide. If you're having a little trouble, get a family member to help hold that ruler while you glide and slide. Remember, when you glide and slide, that pencil bumps right up against that ruler, and you can feel it slide down so nicely. Now, that is in your packet for this week. Why did I put so many different sheets in there? This, if we were in school, would be kind of like our classwork example. And then for homework, you would take that classwork example and you would copycat it for your homework C classwork example. Because we're not in school today, I actually have you doing that as part of your packet for each day. If you've already worked on this, great. If you've not gotten to it yet, A-okay. It's coming. All of us, as we're adjusting to being at home, all of us are working at different paces. Now, this actually went home in last week's packet. You know, if I sent your vocabulary terms, when I send them home, we had just in first grade started having these little math quizzes on Thursdays on spelling test day. We had just gotten that started when we went to this going to school at home because of what's going on in our world. So, you know, we would be working on these words not just for a couple of days, but probably for a couple of weeks. And then we would be going back and reviewing. This is your calendar and time vocabulary. This went home, I think. Miss Sheppard's days have run together because this has been quite a big change for Mrs. Sheppard too. I think this went home last week. But we've talked about this a lot in Fantastic Five. This is when I say seconds in a minute, and you tell me 60. Minutes in an hour, and you tell me 60. Hours in a day, you tell me 24. Days in a week, you tell me 7. Days in a year, you tell me 365. To be exact, Jonathan, it's 365 and 1/4, but I'm not going to get into all that today. Then I say weeks in a year. Wells tells me 52. I say months in a year. Ben tells me 12. I say years in a decade. Elijah tells me 10. I say years in a century. Lawson tells me 100. I say years in a millennium. Damien tells me 1,000. And then when I say AM in the morning, we talked about this a lot in Fantastic Five, AM in the morning, the actual term for AM is antemeridium. I think that's Latin, I'm not really sure, but I think that's Latin, which is a different language. PM, which is in the afternoon, that is post-meridium. And then when I started talking about with your poem, 1/4 of an hour, 1/2 of an hour, 3/4 of an hour, and a whole hour, when I started talking about that, we were at this chunk. 15 minutes after the hour is 1/4 past. 30 minutes after the hour is 1/2 past, and 45 minutes after the hour, this is a little crazy, is not past, but it's 1/4 till the next hour. Now that chunk is really, really tricky, and I'm going to be honest. we're probably the only first graders in North Carolina talking about 15 minutes after, 30 minutes after, 45 minutes after. So if this is a little tricky, this is something that we're going to be talking about or would be talking about for the rest of the school year. So if you don't remember all this as we're going over it, it's okay. This calendar and time vocabulary we'll be working on quite a bit more. So just keep practicing and going over. There's not going to be a quiz coming, so I want you just continuing to go over this and talk about it a little bit each day. All during the day, your parents can just give you little quizzes like we would do during Fantastic Five. And when I say quizzes, I mean those little out loud quizzes that go really fast. We talked about in class when you help me work on my calendar, my big calendar, we talked about 1 month has 31, 30, 29, or 28 days. And different months have different numbers of days. 12 o'clock a.m., that's midnight when you're at home sleeping, and 12 o'clock p.m., that is not for Walton Academy, because Walton Academy we go to lunch a little bit early. 12 o'clock p.m. is when a lot of people are considering their lunchtime. We actually at Walton go to lunch about 11. And then I have another little poem for you. I don't have this in your shared reading packet, but this was in your vocabulary packet from last week. This is a poem that I learned when I was a little girl. It helps me remember how many days are in each month. And this is what that poem sounds like. 30 days has September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except in leap year, then it's time when February's days are 29. And we know that from this year because this year was a leap year. Let's do that poem again. This time I want to hear you at home reading with me. 30 days has September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except in leap year, then it's time when February's days are 29. Now, I don't think we've done this school year, but if you were with me when we started time, which I had planned for us to start last week, when we started time, I would show you this little knuckle trick. Now, I know you did this in your packet last week. I sent a classwork example. Most of you already did that last week. Some of you, if you haven't gotten to that yet, that's A-okay. But this was that classwork example that was in your packet. And all I did, I can't put my hand on the smart board because it will make it go bonkers. If we had done this in class, I would have given you a clean white sheet of paper, probably one of those big pieces like we use for stamping our words, and we would have traced out our hand on that big white sheet of paper. If I press my hand against the smart board and trace, it will make my smart board go bonkers. Now, you know, Miss Sheppard is not Miss Grady. I am not the best artist, so don't laugh at my wacky Fruit Loopy drawing. But I'm going to draw out my hand, and it's going to look a little like a roller coaster. Don't laugh, Mia. I know Miss Sheppard is not the most artistic, and that's going to be my thumb. Oh, bless Miss Sheppard. And my fingers don't look exactly the same, but I think you understand what I'm trying to show you. Now, in your last week's packet, I'm sorry my videos are just coming this week for last week's lesson, but it took me a while to get these iPad video lessons going. So, in your packet from last week, we wrote Jan for January, FEB for February, MAR for March, which is right now the month that we're in. APR for April. I think I wrote out the whole word June. JUL for July. And then AUG for August. Now, I call this, oh, that's not right, Miss Shep. Fruit looping. Sorry, guys. I'm not going to re-record this video. I'm just going to fix it like I would do if you were in class. I wouldn't redo that. Thinking about that months of the year song that Mrs. Little taught you. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Those are the months of the year. I left out April, May, June, sorry guys, July. Now, I knew that didn't look right. Those bullets, like points when we're making line segments, you know, I like them big, fat, and juicy. Those bullets, those points are what I call my knuckles. Those are my knuckle months. The ones that dip down, I call those my ditch months. Every month is either on the knuckle or it's in the ditch. So I've got January, knuckle, February, ditch. March, knuckle, April, ditch. May, knuckle, June, ditch. July, knuckle. This is the trickiest part. After I do July, I go right back and put August on that same knuckle. And then I'm going to work my way back this way. August, September, October, November, December. Now the months that are on a knuckle, my big fat juicy knuckles, my months that are on the knuckle have 31 days. My knuckles that are in the ditch have 30 days. Except my weirdo February has not 31, not 30. February has 28 in a regular year or 29 in a leap year. That went home last week as a classwork example. I know you and your parents probably didn't know what in the world my little hand was all about. So that's why I wanted to backtrack and go back and do this lesson with you on video this week so you would kind of understand what I was talking about. Now my next time lesson when that comes home, we'll go back and do that again. You know, when we're here in at Walton Academy in class, I'll introduce something like the draw hand to show the months of the year, and then we'll do a short little lesson every day until we get really good at it. So I know this was last week's packet. I'm just introducing it to you today. If you already did it last week, I hope that helps you understand it a little bit better. And if you have not gotten to that yet, that should give you a little better understanding of what I need you to do. Now, the last thing I want to talk about today, because you know when Miss Sheppard gets cranked up in her lessons, I am so sorry. My lessons go really long because I have so much I want to tell you and so much I want to teach you. And I just sometimes get to going and get kind of cranked up and lose track of time. Something else you can work on at home is, I've told some of your families, Wells, you can, as we're rolling along, you had this in a cut strips in your packet last week. You know how we cut those little strips and we set up that cut strip station. I can't remember what color it was, But you have this in one color, which is your time vocabulary. And then you have this in a different color. And you know how we were in class at Walton Academy, I probably right now would pull me a math group and I would work on us tracing our hands for our classwork example, and I would check it and give you a little grade. And if I didn't have room for you at my table, some of you would be at the strips station on the carpet. So this would be a good station as you're working on your math vocabulary. This would be a good station that you could set up at home if you have time. If you don't have time, you know, sometimes we get to stations and sometimes we don't. If you don't have time, A-okay. If you're one of those that's a little bit ahead, this would be a good station that you could set up at home to practice that math vocabulary. So, I want that to be a good stopping point for today. You know, we are talking about measuring time. We did our little tools for measuring time. We did the Hickory Dickory Dock clip. We did the Our Power poem, a Mrs. Sheppard original. We did the fractions of an hour poem that's in your shared reading book that you could be practicing during your shared reading time at home. That went home, I think, last week. This is not in your packet. That was just, I wanted to show you what those 1/4 of an hours look like. And this is a chunk that's in your packet for this week. That would be like your classwork example, and you would complete, back at your table, you would complete your HWCCW example page, and that would be your homework for tonight. This was your math vocab from last week. You still have that. If you've already turned this packet in, that's A-okay. If you have some extra time, you're caught up on your lessons, that's something that you could try, and you could do that again. And then you could set up at home, you could set up the strips station, and you could practice your time vocabulary, sorting your little strips. We've done that several times in class before you started doing school at home. Another thing you can do to help with this telling time is you can get out that clock, and all during the day as you're working on your lessons, as you're working on your schoolwork at home, you can be stopping. You can make your time on the clock when you start your independent reading. You can make your time on the clock when you stop your independent reading. You can make your time on the clock when you start listening to Mrs. Sheppard's boxcar lesson on the YouTube clip. You can make your time on the clock when you stop listening to Miss Sheppard's lesson. You can use that clock all day long. The only way we'll get better at measuring time is by doing lots and lots of practicing. So this is going to be a stopping point for today. And you just heard my clock just fell and broke, but that's okay. I was able to put it back together. This is my first math video. This is one that you could watch over again. It's not like the Boxcar Children where you watch it one time and then the next day I move on to another chapter in the chapter book. This is a little bit different because math vocabulary and drawing out the hand and working on those vocabulary terms and going to the little strip station, those are some things that we'd be working on for several days until you got really good at it and we were ready to move on to some different things. So that's a good stopping point for math today. Remember, at home, be working on that measuring time a little bit all through the day, and I'll be coming back soon with another math video for you on time. I miss you. I wish you were with me here on the carpet. I'll be so glad when we can all be back together again. Thank you so much for your hard work at home, and keep working hard, and know that Miss Sheppard misses you very much. That's a wrap for today.